So next we'll go to the Plan View Sketch tab, and I'll walk you through that. There's some adjustment and drawing buttons down here at the bottom. If those are unselected, you can just tap and drag the sketch around. Again, if there's you want to start sketching at a particular station, if you select the latest station and go back here and then hit this target button, that'll recenter on the last station, or the selected station I should say. You can also rotate the sketch. So there's a 3D button here, and then if you drag left and right on the screen, it'll rotate the angle. I prefer not to use this. I prefer to have my sketch with north to the top of the page all the time, and keep it in that orientation. I get a little confused if I start rotating things around. Some people prefer to have it rotated so that the survey shot is in the direction that they're facing, and it makes it a little easier for them to draw. So if you want to do that, you can use this 3D button and rotate it so that the shot is facing towards the top of the page rather than north being at the top of the page. You have the same access to buttons up here at the top. You have Bluetooth access to your Disto X, and then a manual add button. There's a plus and minus here for zooming. So if you want to zoom in, hit the plus, minus to zoom out. You can also pinch to zoom. And as I mentioned before, there's a grid here, and it shows you a scale bar up in the upper left-hand corner, and these are always metric-based grids. It gives you some data down here in the bottom left. This is the total survey length, and then the total vertical extent of the survey. So the next two icons down at the bottom are for sketching. There's a pencil icon and a tag icon. So the pencil icon, if we tap on that, it brings up this menu, and you have what looks like a pencil and a line. That's for drawing lines. There's looks like a paint can. That's for doing fill areas. There's an undo and redo button, and then the button on the right is an erase button. There's also a little circle here that's colored, and you can change the color of the line or item that you're drawing. In most cases I use black as a default, but if you tap, there isn't really a palette to choose from. You can choose the kind of color region you want. So if you want water, maybe you go down to the blue and then pick something like that, and then you have to tap on that button on the right in order for that to become active. So if you choose the line tool, if you tap and hold that, a menu will come up, and there are 5 different line options. There's a sort of a thick line and a thin line. There's a dashed line, and then you have the 2 ledge symbol tools. So this is for floor ledges and for ceiling ledges. And you can use these, but I'll get into it a little bit later as to why these are sometimes problematic. As you bring these sketches into Qave cartography software like Adobe Illustrator, it doesn't read these symbols very well. So I try to stick with just a line tool, and then if I want to do floor ledges or ceiling ledges, I just draw them manually, as you would with a paper sketch. So if you choose a line tool like that, you can just draw right on the screen, and the software is fairly responsive to pen movement, so it has a fairly high resolution. If you need to move the drawing around while you're in the drawing program, you'll need to hit this back arrow, go back one menu, and then you can drag and zoom. So again, if you need to draw a floor ledge, you can just draw that manually, or a ceiling ledge. And that'll be easier for the software, the drafting software, to read later. This paint can icon is for fill areas. If you want to do pools in blue, you can do that. And then draw the outline of the pool. It'll show up like that. Some people will use this to do things like sediment. Maybe they want brown to represent sand or silt on the floor. I find this a little confusing because it's not really a standard symbol that's recognized. So the person that's sketching, they could create a key if they wanted to. So they want to go back in and draw and say fill area, do do something like this, and then something like that, so that the cartographer knows what that means. But otherwise, I would recommend just using kind of standard symbology. If we go back here, we can use this erase tool. We could use the undo tool. Let me show you that real quick. To erase the last several drawing items, or you can select this erase tool and you can choose the items you want to erase. Say we want to get rid of this line. So it's a fairly simple sketch interface. That's the line tools and the fill area tools. If you hit this back arrow and back to this main menu and go to the tags button, there are only a couple options here. There's another erase tool here, although if you're going to erase lines, you have to be in the line menu to do that. This is only for erasing the symbols and text that you might enter under the tags menu. So the circle with the T is for adding a text label. So you can select that and then tap on the screen, and then it'll pop up the keyboard, and you can type in whatever you like. It'll put that there as a label. You can handwrite as well. Back in the pencil tool, if you just choose pencil, maybe I want the thinner line, I can just write in here, lead, 6 high by 4 wide, or whatever it might be. So you can include details just by handwriting, but you can type it in as well through this text tag function here. If I want to erase that, I can do that. It's not that obvious, but there's another button in the middle here, and by default it's this like parallel line thing, but if you tap on that, that's symbols. If you tap and hold, it brings up a library here, so you have a lot of sort of traditional symbols. There's roughly 30 different symbols to choose from, but you can choose different speleothems, like stalagmites, and add those to your drawing. In order for these to be recognized in cartography software like Illustrator, you have to install a special font, and I can show you that Speleo UIS font. Basically recognizes these symbols and translates them properly into the survey software, so that works in both Illustrator and Inkscape. There are a few symbols in here that, so things like stalagmites, stalactites are sort of fixed symbols. There are a few like flowstone here that when you add that, this little window comes up and says, it just says OK over here, and this you can rotate. So if you drag left and right on the screen, it'll rotate that symbol around. So flowstone does have directionality to it, and you can drag it till it's in the right orientation, then tap OK. If I want to add another one, again, you can rotate it around, tap OK. So there's a few symbols in here that have that directionality. There's another one for water flow, like this. So if we had a stream, again, we can rotate that until it's pointing in the correct direction, then tap OK. So that's how the symbols work. You can play around with those and decide if you want to use those. But again, so just with the line drawing tool, you can draw these things manually. So if you want to use that symbol for stalagmite, if you want to add a halictite in there, you can include those symbols. Now on the plan view sketch page, you can also add cross sections, and there's a couple ways to do this. One is just to manually draw them in, which is sort of what I prefer. You can use the line tool, and then you have a grid back here for scale, so you can just draw the cross section off to the side as you would with the paper sketch. The other way to do it is for a given survey station, if you tap and hold, this box pops up for cross section, and if you tap on that, you get another page that shows up, another sketch page that's specifically for cross sections. And that long tap on the plan view sketch page is the only way to access this. As you can see, I've drawn some cross sections for different stations here. The one advantage of doing it this way is that if you have any splay shots around those stations, those splay shots will show up and could be used as a guideline for a more accurate cross-section sketch. And then to go back to the main sketch page, you tap and hold somewhere else on the screen and it'll pop back to the standard plan view sketch. So we'll move on to the projected profile tab. That's the third tab over. And this is just a line plot. You can see that the drawing tools are grayed out. You don't have that option. You can do the centering on the selected station, I should say, and you can do rotation from the screen as well. What this will do, if you drag back and forth, it changes the orientation. So you can see on the left and right are the angles, the orientation angle, and you can see that the projection of that profile line plot changes as you change the angle. Again, there's not much use for this, so I don't use it for much of anything. I prefer not to rotate, as I mentioned before. I like to have north at the top of the page. Obviously with profile views, this is up and down, and then you have west and east. Right now it's a north-facing projection, which is the default, and I prefer just to leave it like that. But since you can't sketch on this page, and most people don't sketch projected profile views, they do extended profile view sketches, and then make adjustments, morph the sketch to match the projection if they're doing a projected line plot in the finished map. The fourth and final tab on the sketch menu is the extended profile sketch view page, and so these are survey shots that there is no west or east orientation. The shots are just stretched out in a straight line, and you have access then to the sketch tools. You can use symbols as well as the drawing lines and area fills like you have with the plan view sketch. The default for this extended profile sketch is having the shots go from left to right across the screen. If the passage makes a sharp change in direction, sometimes it's easier to sketch if you reverse the direction on the profile extended profile view. If you want to do that, you can tap and hold on the station and it'll say invert, and now it takes that shot and displays it going back in the other direction.